Chapter 22. The Runaway Train. The harpy flew over the countryside like a silent predator, hidden by advanced optical camouflage. The passenger train below stretched out across the tracks. It was 12 coaches long and looked like a speeding silver snake carrying dozens of innocent lives to disaster. It was easy to feel the tension inside the VTOL's bay. "Target in sight," Artyom said from the cockpit, his voice calm and steady as he slowly changed the plane's height. Deploying between coaches 6 and 7. Steady as she goes. Zeus, also known as Nick, stood next to the Jones brothers Paul and Barry. They were all wearing tactical gear and had their weapons locked and loaded. "Hey, everyone!" Gina's voice cut through the cabin noise, sharp and urgent. "We have 10 minutes to stop that train. Check your guns and make sure they are on silent mode. Leonard will kill civilians without thinking if he thinks we're on board." "Yes, ma'am," all three of them said at the same time, each one checking and double-checking their gear. The weight of the mission settled in their stomachs like lead, but none of them wavered. Paul tightened the straps on his abseil harness and nodded at Barry quickly. "Barry, are you ready?" he called, his eyes fixed on the hatch that would drop them into the storm. "Mate, I was born ready," Barry replied, his Welsh accent breaking the tension with a burst of raw spirit. With Paul by his side, he wasn't scared. He had a goal. Then, with the confidence of a seasoned Spartan, Paul stepped into the drop zone and yelled, "Oggy, Oggy, Oggy!" before jumping into the fast-moving air. Barry immediately followed, and his voice rose in response. "Oi, oi, oi!" As they dropped through the hidden door, the wind howled past them, and their rallying cry sounded like a battle hymn. In just a few seconds, both landed firmly between coaches 6 and 7. Their boots made a soft noise as they hit the roof, and then locked into place with magnets. The train below them roared across the tracks, with steel grinding against steel. The wind was very strong, but their suits stayed strong. The brothers didn't hesitate. They started walking towards the front of the train, ducking low and steady. Each step brought them closer to the engine car and the control system they needed to hack. Gina quickly grabbed one of the extra harnesses and handed it to Zeus after Paul and Barry unhooked from their abseil ropes and disappeared into the wind. She had already secured her own with the kind of ease that came from years of hard work. "Okay, Artyom," she said over the radio, her voice calm but firm. "The Jones brothers are on target. Take us to the back." "Da, Captain," the pilot said smoothly. He let off the gas, and the harpy moved with graceful accuracy, hovering silently above the back coach. The air inside the bay got thicker with excitement. Gina looked at Zeus, and her face hardened into one of unwavering focus. "Now's your chance to prove to me that you can really be a Spartan." Zeus changed how he held the rope, and the adrenaline was pounding under his armor. Wasn't the last mission a good test? Gina let out a dry smile. "That was just the appetizer," she said, her voice getting sharper. "This is the main course." She didn't say anything else and swung onto the abseil line, disappearing into the night. Zeus followed a few seconds later, and the cold wind hit him hard as he fell. The train roared like a beast beneath them, its metal back streaking through the countryside without stopping. They landed together on top of the back coach, clean, smooth, and exact. click. Their boots stuck to the ground, keeping them in place. "Artyom, disperse," Gina said into her earpiece. "We'll call for extraction once we've secured the hostages." The harpy peeled away like a ghost, and its shape faded into the darkening night. "Okay, Zeus," Gina said, lowering her stance and quickly moving towards the back access hatch. "Stay close. Do what I say. Don't improvise." "Yes, Captain," he said, his heart racing but steady. Gina's sharp eyes were drawn to a ladder that was bolted to the side of the train. Without thinking, she crouched down and swung over the edge. She fell quickly, but with care. She moved with purpose, and her boots found solid footing on each rung even though the train was moving. She reached the lower access panel, grabbed the handle, steadied herself, and forced it open. As she slipped inside, a gust of recycled air rushed past her face. Zeus was right behind her, coming down with mechanical grace. As his boots hit the ground, the door closed behind them, blocking out the sound of the wind outside. The mood changed right away. There was an eerie silence, broken only by the train's hum and the quiet whispers of scared passengers. The coach's interior was dimly lit, which made the narrow hallway look like it had long shadows. Gina leaned her back against the cold metal wall, which shook slightly with the beat of the tracks. Her heart raced, but the adrenaline made her focus sharper than a razor. She pulled out her silenced magnum, which felt familiar and grounding. She used a few clear hand signals to tell Zeus to go to the other wall. He did what she said, keeping his posture and staying in a tight formation. "I see 3 black death bots up ahead," she whispered, keeping her eyes on the hallway, "and about 20 people on board. We need to get rid of them quietly, with no alarms or deaths." Zeus nodded sharply. He leaned forward a little to get a better look. The enemy bots stood still, scanning the passengers with cold, mechanical precision. People sitting nearby were scared, and some were shaking, while others were frozen in fear. "Is your gun quiet?" "What's going on?" Gina asked, her voice a mix of tension and steel. Zeus didn't say anything, but he raised his sidearm and checked the suppressor. In the dim light, the barrel shone dully. He nodded quickly. "Ready?" "Good," she said, her voice barely audible but full of determination. "I'll take the first. You take care of the next one. I'll clean up the third. On 3. They crouched down more, and the space between them was full of unspoken coordination. Zeus took a slow breath and blocked out the sound of the carriage, the fear around him, and even the slight shaking of his hands. This was what he had practiced for. Gina's voice was very quiet. "Are you ready?" "Ready," he said in a firm voice. 1, 2, 3. Gina moved quickly and smoothly. She stepped out from behind the wall in one smooth motion, raised her gun, and fired a single shot that was muffled. The closest bot's head snapped back, and sparks flew from its head as it fell to the floor in a heavy heap. Zeus jumped into action as Gina took out the first trooper. He moved forward with practiced ease, each step quiet and controlled, his eyes fixed on the second Black Death robot. The machine stood still, not knowing that danger was coming from behind. Its optical sensors were focused on the scared civilians instead of the shadows behind it. Zeus took a deep breath and raised his silenced gun, aiming it at the base of the robot's skull. He pulled the trigger. A muffled thud rang out in the carriage, and the robot fell over right away, its arms and legs going limp like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Last one's yours, Captain," Zeus whispered, looking around for any remaining enemies. His heart was steady even though he was on edge. Gina gave a quick nod and moved towards the last trooper, which had just started to turn its head. Its processors were too slow to notice the strange thing. She quickly raised her magnum and fired a single, accurate shot between the machine's glowing eyes. When the robot hit the ground, sparks flew out of the impact point, and it jerked once before falling to the floor with a loud clank. "All clear," she said, her voice low but firm as she looked back at Zeus. Zeus moved to her side after getting rid of the immediate threats. His body was still buzzing with adrenaline. "What's next?" he asked, looking at the passengers, who were all frozen in fear and confusion, with dozens of scared faces staring at them. Gina put her gun away and changed her stance to show that she was in charge. "We make sure they don't move. We don't need to panic right now." She turned to the passengers and raised her voice, not shouting, but loud enough to break the heavy silence. "Hey everyone, my name is Captain Gina Rhodes, and I am in charge of the Spartan Response Unit. Zeus is my partner. We're here to help you get out of this safely. Stay in your seats while we clear the rest of the train for your own safety. Don't move unless told to." A murmur went through the carriage. The fear in their eyes started to melt away. One older woman, with grey hair and hands shaking in her lap, looked up and gave a grateful nod. "Thank you," she said in a shaky voice. "Thanks for coming." Gina smiled at her for a short time, but it was enough to make her feel better. Then she looked at Zeus, who was already walking towards the door of the carriage. That's right. Next coach. Same method. Quiet, fast, and exact. "Understood, Captain," Zeus said, his voice steady as steel. Gina and Zeus quickly and quietly cleared the next 5 coaches. They then reached the last compartment, where Leonard Payne and his remaining Black Death soldiers were hiding. You could feel the tension in the air. These guys weren't on patrol. They were dug in, holding the space like predators waiting for prey. Zeus crouched behind a steel bulkhead and leaned out carefully, moving around to get a better look. The light inside the carriage was low, and broken bulbs on the ceiling flickered from time to time. Leonard stood tall and threatening in the shadows, looming over a hostage, with a presence that made him seem cruel and in charge. He was a mountain of muscle, shaped by years of hard fighting. The armor he stole was a prototype variant that looked like Zeus's own suit, but was less polished, heavier, bulkier, and worn from many battles. Like war medals carved into steel, scratches, bullet scars, and scorch marks covered its frame. But it was Leonard's face that really caught Zeus's attention. His left eye was a horrible mess, broken and raw, so horrible that Zeus winced. You'd think he would have that eye replaced with cybernetics, Zeus said in a low voice that was both disgusted and curious. Leonard has always said no to augmentation, Gina said, her voice flat but full of anger. Says it makes you look weak. He'd rather show off his wounds like trophies to show that he's been through things that others couldn't. And a warning to anyone who might want to get in his way. She thought for a moment, then said in a serious tone, "That eye injury must have happened while he was in San Angeles. I'd buy a drink for whoever gave it to him." Zeus looked again, and his heart raced when he saw a familiar face among the hostages, Connor. His friend sat with his face against the window, pale but calm. There was fear in his eyes, but also determination. He was quietly defying Zeus, which made Zeus's chest tighten. He was still alive, but time was running out for them and the stakes had just gone up. Then Zeus saw something else. There was a big suitcase-sized device next to two of the Black Death troopers. The metal case shone in a scary way, and a small light blinked steadily. There was more than just equipment. It was an explosive. "Captain," he said, his voice full of urgency, "they have a bomb. It's not enough to crash the train. They want to destroy the whole station. We're talking about a full-scale explosion." Gina's eyes narrowed as she turned on the zoom feature on her visor. She saw it too in a matter of seconds. The form, the wiring, the telltale glow of a trigger that is ready to fire. "Oh my gosh," she said. "That's a charge with a lot of weight. They want to make a hole in the ground at King's Cross." She looked at Zeus, and the fire of leadership burned behind her eyes. "Good eye. That bomb has to go away quickly. I'll call command and tell them to get a bomb squad ready at the meeting place. But first, we need to make sure it's safe." At that moment, Gina got a message on her comms. Because the squad was linked by the synchronized Spartan communication network, Zeus heard it too. "Captain," Paul said, his voice breaking up a little because of the static. "We've reached the front of the train. Barry is connected to the system. Daedalus is in charge now." "Let's hope he works quickly," Gina said, her voice tense with urgency as she looked down the hallway. "We have less than 5 minutes before this train hits King's Cross. Before then, those brakes need to be online." "Understood, Captain," Paul said, his confidence strong even though things were tense. "Barry and I will meet up with you again after we stop the train." Paul out. The queue went dead, but Gina's mind was racing with numbers and options, weighing the risks against the rewards. Every second that went by made her thoughts more urgent. She looked over at Zeus, who was still watching from behind the metal barrier. "Okay, Zeus. We have some time, so here's the plan," she said, in a calm, cool voice. "I'm going to talk to Leonard directly. Get his mind off of it. In the meantime, you go back to the last coach and open one of the side doors. Get on the roof and walk along the top until you are directly above us. You crash through the window when the brothers hit the brakes. You land hard and take Leonard out. If you have to, drive him through the wall of the carriage. We need to surprise him." Zeus blinked as he thought about how crazy the plan was. It was dangerous, even reckless. But in war, there was a time and place for being reckless, especially when your best weapons were surprise and accuracy. He looked Gina in the eye. There was something deeper than the hard-edged resolve. Not scared, not doubt, but a quiet weight of history, of old loyalty and betrayal that hasn't been dealt with yet. She wasn't just killing a terrorist. She was facing a ghost. "Okay, Captain," he finally said, his voice firm. "I'll be ready." Gina nodded tightly. "Keep your lines of communication open. I'll let you know when it's time." Zeus didn't say anything else. He turned around and started to walk back the way he had come, crouching low and moving like a shadow through the narrow hallway. He stopped at the side door and looked through the small window before slowly opening it. The roaring wind was a violent contrast to the tense inside. He stepped out in one smooth motion, holding on to the edge of the train as he pulled himself up onto the roof. The wind howled like a beast, pulling at his cape and hitting his armor, but Zeus didn't let go. As he started to walk back towards the coach above Leonard's compartment, his boots stuck to the floor with magnets. Gina put her gun away and stepped out from behind cover, her jaw tightening. In the next few minutes, she would have to deal with more than just being ready for battle. She would have to deal with the man Leonard had become. Leonard Payne. She knew him before he turned into this monster. They had fought together in Titan Squad, shoulder to shoulder. They had shed blood for the same cause. But war had a way of showing what people were really like, or breaking them beyond recognition. Leonard had made his choice. A path of selfishness, corruption, and cruelty. She had to be the one to put an end to it now. She ran her fingers over the side of her helmet to check the channel to Zeus, check the comms, confirm position. Zeus answered from the roof above. In position, waiting for the green light. Gina shut her eyes for a second, then they breathed out. Showtime. And så och inte I in is time.